everyone. Are we all excited still? Are we gaining a lot of knowledge today? I hope there's more excitement than that when you come back. So yeah, talking about psychology and combining that with data and why it's essential, I think, when you look at when we're optimizing your product. But yeah, of course, I can tell you a lot about it. I can also try showing it or letting you experience it. So let's give that a try. So I want you all to stand up. I know it's a lot to ask, right? It's almost the end of the day. Standing up. Okay. I'm sorry, I had way too much Red Bull. So I want to do a little exercise with you. I'm gonna move your arms a bit, and it's very simple. Basically, you need to do the same as what I'm doing. You just need to copy my arm movements. But be careful not to hit the person next to you or the person in front of you. So I think we can all do this, right? Stretch your arms. You can clap your arm. Perfect! The best audience ever. Thumbs down. Put your arm up. Okay, so now half of you has their left hand up, half of you has their right hand up. I have my left hand up, so you all should also have your left hand up. Then you put them over each other and you interlock them. Yeah, and if you did it right, your left thumb should be on top, and I still see a couple of people over there that have trouble between left and right, but it's okay. Your left thumb should be up. You extend your index finger. Now, if you indeed did exactly what I did, you will all be able to do this. No one? Okay, you can sit down. That's fine. Ah, tough audience. Okay, so even you can be influenced. I mean, I do the session quite a bit, and then people ask me, oh, those tricks, they don't work on me. They might work on stupid customers, but they don't work on me. Now you know they might also work on you, so just be aware of that. So why am I standing here? So I'm a psychologist. I have a background working in e-commerce, over 10 years of experience. Most of the last 5 years I worked on the client side, building optimization teams. And I mainly worked with Magento, but basically the work that I do is really platform agnostic. I look a lot at data, mostly Google Analytics. I combine that with user research, can be interviews, can be things like Hotjar or usability, combining that to get an overview of the customer, and then putting that through a validation process, usually with experiments, and you've heard a lot about that already today. So you should be aware how that works. I'm not going to talk to you about why you should be running those experiments or how, but more about the people part. So one thing you should be aware of, talking about the brain and your customer's brain, over 11 million bits of information get into the brain. So there's an enormous bandwidth that your brain has in taking in all that information. It can be visual, can be auditory, can be all kinds of information. 11 million pieces of information. But the brain only has 20 watts to do this with. The whole body consumes around 100 watts, and the brain takes 1/5 of that. But there's a bit of a paradox there. There's a lot of information that the brain needs to consume, that the brain receives, but it only has 20 watts to deal with. And 20 watts is really efficient. It's like a regular light bulb or like 4 LED light bulbs. So it has to be really efficient in what it does. So the way to do this is by being very lazy. And I think we can all relate to that, right? The less effort we can put into something and still get our result, the better it is. And that's actually what your brain is trained to do. I mean, if it's ready, then it's good enough. So of those 11 million pieces of information, only 50 of them reach your conscious mind. So a lot of the information is just ignored. A lot of information, it doesn't even reach your consciousness. And that's so really small part that you actually notice. Like your body temperature. Your brain is still getting that information, but you're not necessarily consciously aware of that most of the time. And so by being really efficient, the brain looks at things that are different. So everything that stays the same, that's not really interesting to your brain. So it ignores that or fills it in. So also when you're, for example, in an environment like this, over 99% of what your brain sees, so this is about visual information, over 99% is actually created by your brain. It stays the same. You don't continuously, your brain isn't continuously checking if that stage is still there, if those lights are still there, if the ceiling is still there. It's still there. There's a very high likelihood that it's still there. So your brain isn't continuously checking that. That's not efficient. It just assumes it's still there. If something changes, it will notice it. But if it's still there, it's not actually actively checking that. So a lot of that is actually filled in by your brain. And same story actually for when you're making decisions. Over 95% of the decisions that you make are fairly autonomous. It's fairly automatic. You don't have to consciously think about how you actually open a door or how you drive your car. Unless it's the first time you drive a car, then you're very conscious about it and it's very overwhelming. But after a while, it becomes a habit. It becomes very natural to you. You don't have to consciously think about it. And that's a good thing, right? You don't want to consciously think about those things. So to save energy, that's what you need to remember. To save energy, the brain only looks at things that are different, things that change, things that are unexpected, and the rest is filled in to create your own reality. And the way the brain does this, there are a lot of heuristics for this. You can forget the term, that's how psychologists do it, these are heuristics. But what you do need to be conscious about for yourself and for your customer, those heuristics, those shortcuts, rules of thumb, they lead to biases. So you assume something which is mostly true, but isn't true in all cases. And those heuristics, there are a lot of them, but they're roughly divided into 4 categories. So when you have information overload, how can you deal with that? So when there's, for example, a lot of information on your page, like when you're selling technical products, there can be a lot of information in there. There can be a lack of information, but you still need to make a decision sometimes, even if you don't have all the information. And looking for all the information takes a lot of time. Again, that's not really efficient. So your brain is trained to make decisions even when there's a lack of information. Sometimes you need to act fast. There's a fire. There's the exit. Are you questioning me? No, you start running for the exit. You're not going to say there, oh, well, there. Yeah, okay, there's a fire, but there might be an exit over there might be an exit over there. Let's all discuss where the exit is that's the closest to us. No, we're just going to run for the exit. And number 4, what should I remember? And that's the bias you're all experiencing today, right? You have a lot of sessions here. A lot of information is reaching your brain. What do you need to remember? And this is a nice overview, way too detailed to read, but it's a cognitive codex, and it has all these 4 categories. And if you go to Wikipedia, there's a list of cognitive biases. There are over 500 of them. You've probably already heard a couple of them today. I'm not going to go into these, but just be aware there are a lot of things, shortcuts that our brain makes that helps you make decisions and help your customer to make decisions. I think one of the most famous ones will be social proof, where we like what others are doing. If someone else is doing something, they're probably doing it for a reason, right? Might be the wrong reason, might not be relevant to me, but if there's social proof for something, like so a lot of people buying something online, a lot of people liking something on Facebook, there's probably a reason for that. It's one of the cognitive biases. Let's try another one. You can stay seated. But randomly pick a number. And I think our audience is large enough now, so randomly pick a number. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Everyone has a number in his head? Okay, who picked 3? As you probably know, this is not 25%. Around 60% of people pick number 3. We're not that good at picking things random. I mean, it's random, but 1 doesn't really feel random. It's on the side, just as 4. It's not really random. 2, it's too close to 1. Let's pick 3. That's the most random number we can think of. And many people do. So again, our brain is wired to move in certain things, and you're probably not even aware of that. That's the scary part. And if you're a merchant, that's a very useful part. So it becomes predictable what people are doing. So yeah, when talking about doing business, and even when it's through technology, there's still a consumer at the end of that. And it's really helpful if you know how that works. So read up on that and make sure that you know what works for your customer. And it's been said a couple of times today already, but run experiments. I've done a lot of those experiments, and there are a lot of those biases, but the important thing that you should also know is that they don't always apply equally everywhere. And I run experiments, that's my job. I do that for business. Even for me, it's really hard to predict the outcome of experiments. And that's basically the reason why we keep doing this. It's really important to do that, to figure out what actually works for the customers. And we often see it that something works amazingly well for one client and it does not work for another client. Like adding social proof. We did a big experiment and it worked on a banking website. Adding a social proof was for mortgages. In this case, adding social proof actually increased the number of mortgages that they sold, which is also ethically questionable, but hey. But if you run a porn website, don't show me the number of my Facebook friends that likes this video, please. Don't do that. So make sure that, and this is an extreme example, of course, but a lot of those things, they might work in 80% of the cases, and just like biases, often they work, but they might not work for your specific audience or your specific case. Maybe you have a website where urgency is really important, where acting fast is really important, and you'll see, like maybe you have an auction website, behavior really changes in those extensions, so make sure to experiment. And again, not all experiments are successful. I hope you all are aware of that. We just had, so one of my clients is, I worked for Euroflorist. We had 25% success rate of experiments. We just heard Booking this morning, run 1,000 experiments, only 10% success rate. So you need to run a lot of experiments to be successful in it. But of course, you only implement the ones that are successful. So this is the way to improve your business. So my second and third part is about how to build your optimization team and how to build a culture around that. What I usually do for clients, so we look at their digital maturity. We have 5 levels of that digital maturity. The information will be online. It's not meant to be read. But we have 5 levels, and we look at the people, the platform, and the process that's implemented in the company and how we do that at each level. And let's have a look at the people and skills part. So when you start optimizing with these stages, and these stages are, it's a continuum, of course, it's not just completely separated or isolated stages, so remind that. But level 1, usually the lone nut, the one person at a company that really believes in optimization, but he's the only one who feels like that. A couple of them there, that's good. Keep at it. There's no real zero program in place, but are really enthusiastic about all the possibilities. Then you graduate to level 2, where there's usually someone taking care of UX, doing data research, you have a designer, and you have someone that can actually execute it. That's basically the real first team you can start optimizing, or at the bare minimum that you need. The insights, the design and the execution, the implementation of that. Then you go to stage 3, and remember, after stage 3, usually what I see happening is you either have a standalone zero team, or you go to more of a zero center of excellence kind of situation, where you have one central team that supports other teams, like booking. They have over 75 product teams, so they have a centralized teams that support those other product teams running the experiments, but often you have just one centralized team that runs the experiments. This is how level 3 looks like. Usually someone taking care of the acquisition, including that in the experimentation mix, content specialist, creating the content, and someone testing, making sure the quality is right. I mean, we all know about different browsers and mobile devices. If you also include experiments in the mix, you definitely need to make sure that those are actually working and that your customer actually sees the experiment, right? A lot of experiments maybe that are below the fold, and that there are a lot of customers in your experiment that might not even have seen the experiment. You need to make sure that those are excluded. Level 4, usually add a data analyst, data specialist, and a behavioral analyst or psychologist to your team. And then level 5, and not a lot of companies are at level 5. You add people to take care of data visualization, maybe a statistician even, and more overarching project management roles. So this is just a quick overview of how those teams often look like. So from level 1 to level 2. And of course, especially in the beginning, roles can be combined. You don't have to hire separate people. If you have someone that can do both great design and has a front-end development or JavaScript skills, that's great. Make use of that. It definitely doesn't stop with the team or that lone nut. Starting at level 2, you need to make sure, it's also part of the culture, make sure that there are support from other departments. And the most important departments, usually that I need to contact when implementing optimization teams at companies. Well, the first one, you might have heard this team, the term in growth hacking, is the shit umbrella. Your shit umbrella, that's basically the manager above the optimization team, making sure that you can do whatever you are doing and have time to do this, and not people are expecting results within the first couple of weeks that you're doing your job. So that's the shit umbrella. Then you have the business. You need to be aligned with the business goals. Customer support is a really important one to get customer feedback. Usually one of the biggest sources of input on where customers are getting stuck. To make sure to contact those. Finance is a very important one, together with BI and big data. If your optimization team, they're running experiments, and you might be in an optimization team, you might say, okay, we have so much percent of increase in conversion, or we're making I don't know, $500,000 extra. But then everyone say, yeah, but that's the optimization team. We didn't see the $500,000 anywhere on our bank account. And so that's why it's really important to, together with the finance and BI team, to make them do those calculations and claims so you can do your work. Backend development for more extreme or more difficult experiments that you're doing. Marketing department, of course, you need to be aligned with all the campaigns that are running. And the final one, acquisition, all the traffic they're sending. It's great to, for example, if Conversion rate is an important metric for you. Conversion rate is great, but if they're sending a lot of crap traffic, your conversion rate will go down without you doing anything. So make sure to align with that. Those are the most important departments within your company you should be aware of. And action comes from culture. So that's definitely an important one. It's not only about getting the right people, it's getting them into the right mindset with the whole company doing so. And there's a whole culture talk after this one. But I'm going to give you a bit of perspective from my side. And maybe that aligns with the next speaker, who knows. So how to start an optimization culture, at least in my experience. So why do you need a culture? Definitely you cannot do everything alone. You cannot do everything centralized. Like I just showed you all the departments that need to be involved. If it's only you or your team that likes to experiment, you're not going to get far. You really need to buy in from those experiments and that they're at least aware and knowledgeable about what you're doing. Oftentimes teams are distributed. I work with many international teams, a lot of people in different locations. It's really hard to manage that if there's not kind of a culture or an acceptance of running experiments. Like I said, for example, at Booking, and then most clients I work with, more than half of the experiments you're running will be failing in the terms of there might not be an increase in the conversion rate or whatever metric you're optimizing for. So you need to have a strong culture that allows for that people are comfortable with making those mistakes, which are not really mistakes. As long as you're learning and you're doing a good job, but management might not see it that way if your conversion rate doesn't increase with every experiment. So you need to have the right culture to support that. A lack of understanding of statistics doesn't really help, and a lot of companies I start with, they don't really trust the data. So if you're running experiments, for example, in using Google Analytics as your data source, but no one is trusting the data, like the profits in there aren't correct or the revenue in there is not correct, if everyone already knows that and you're reporting on that, basically you can stop right there. If no one trusts your reporting, it doesn't make much sense. So you need to make sure that people are aware of that and people are working on that. And experimentation doesn't come naturally to everyone. In our education system, well, when you go to school, when you do an exam, it's usually a question, A, B, C, D. Those are the answers. I don't know how you feel about that when you're doing business, but usually there's not a clear question to start with, and there's usually not an A, B, C, D answer in there, and if there's usually a combination, so it usually doesn't really work that way. And well, in school might be one right answer. In business, that's not the case. So, but that's what most people are trained to do. And when you go to a manager and you tell, yeah, I actually don't know what works best for the customer. In a lot of companies, that's not really acceptable. But you should get to a situation where you can say, okay, I don't know what works for a customer, but I definitely know how to figure that out. And that's the whole optimization process. And that's something you need to be comfortable with within your company. And it's a lot like community building. That's how I feel. I built online communities before with Joomla and with Magento in the Netherlands. And to me, this feels very similar, but doing this internally at companies. So let's go through a couple of things. One of the first, definitely, again, is an important one. That's why I'm repeating it. Take care of your shit umbrella. Another thing you can do, it's really hard to do, actually, weirdly enough, but translate your CRO program to ROI. Again, take contact with your BI or finance department, but if you can translate whatever you're doing into money, that really helps usually. Paradoxically, it's very clear, of course, when running one experiment what the outcome is and what the uplift is. But over a whole year, that's actually quite hard to do. So make sure that you figure out a way to do this so you can show the company what you're doing. For usually definitely when we're working with distributed teams, having regular calls with the whole team to discuss the issues, whatever country is dealing with, and it definitely helps. Having regular meetings or maybe even stand-ups can really be beneficial. I'm also creating often CRO buddies, either between companies of our clients or within company clients. So one optimizer with another optimizer, like one UX researcher with an analyst or a designer. And for half a year, they're creating experiments together. And after half a year, we change it up. We match you with someone else. That really gets them to build experiments. They're not limited by what others are thinking, what external people are thinking, or what I'm thinking. It's just them building the experiments. Getting visibility within your company definitely helps. It's not just about sending out emails with the results. Really try to get in the spotlight of whatever your company is doing at events or other internal meetings, not just from you, but other reports. Try to get in there, try to show what this program is bringing you. And the final one, having a transparent workflow tool really helps. Quite some tools out there. You can use spreadsheets, you can use Trello. I personally like effective experiments, using that. And give access to everyone in the company to that, so that they can see what's happening. Oftentimes, when I started companies, when they haven't done experimentation before, when you start running A/B tests, whatever is going wrong on the website, the optimization team will get the question, hey, are you running a test on this? Something weird is going on. Did you break it? Oftentimes the answer is no, but they're still asking you, so it really helps. For example, you can share this tool or access to whatever you're running with, for example, customer support, so they can check if there's actually an experiment going on that particular page. That will hopefully really help you. To wrap it up, there's an Accelerate series on the Vaimo blog on a lot of these topics from me and my colleagues, telling all kinds of things about this, and hopefully give you more in-depth information on this if you have questions on specific topics. We actually do this also for other agencies, so if you're interested in that, definitely let me know. We're not specifically tied to Magento or any other platform, so we're helping other agencies set this up for clients. And I usually, also when I get to a client, my goal is to make myself redundant. It's up to the client to build their team internally. Well, it's up to me to build a team, but they should be doing it by themselves after a while. So I'm not making them dependent on me. We have a host of strategy and consulting services, and for Vaimo, it's a Swedish company, but we actually have offices in 15 countries, but we have clients worldwide, so we should be able to help you if you need it, whether you're on the agency side or on the client side. If you like podcasts, we just started the Core of Commerce podcast. The 3rd episode just went live. It's the gap I'm trying to get into here is there's a lot of podcasts on e-commerce that are international, which usually means United States. So I'm trying to fill that gap with the Core of Commerce podcast and talking about e-commerce in Europe. So if you have a cool story on that, please reach out to me, and I'll definitely would like to have you as a guest on the podcast. If you want to download the slides, this is the URL you need to write down or remember or take a picture of. And I hope you have a great day and learn a lot more exciting things today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you do that again? I think yeah. Okay, great photo op.
I never got an applause for that, but thank you.
Okay, it's good that you haven't fallen. So let's grab 1 or 2 quick questions, right? We don't have a lot of time. How do you identify the most relevant biases that we should use when optimizing user experience?
Usually it becomes very clear. So I find it very hard to get my insights just from tools like Google Analytics or just anything that aggregates the data automatically aggregates data from all my users. It's very useful in determining where the issue is. like in the checkout or in the basket or, I don't know, on the landing page. But it's really hard for me to say, okay, well then we need to do X, Y, Z. What I usually do is do user studies. We do, most of our clients, we do monthly user studies. So we interview real people, real customers. Sounds really scary, I know, but we get real customers into an office location and get them to go through cases on the website. And usually then it becomes very clear why they are dropping off somewhere. And so if you go to the URL, there are actually some methods to figure out, okay, what are the biases that people might have and that we should look into or should fix. And there are some schemes in there that can help you do that. So there's not a one-size-fits-all, but there are methods to go through, like a tree, and then you can get to the right methods. Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of methods, I have a question here which relates to overwork and burned out teams who don't have actually time to experiment or resist the experiment, because usually managers don't free up time for experimentation. How do you deal with that as a method?
You outsource to Vaimo. No, but that often happens, right? So if often when you're gonna, this is often implemented in the marketing team, and then yeah, you should also do experimentation. But that's often that's really hard to do, and that's often not successful. You really need to assign dedicated time for this. Is it just your marketing team, or even one person doing this on the side for like 4 or 8 hours a week? It's not going to work. If you want to prove that this is going to work, so I'm half jokingly about outsourcing. It doesn't have to be Vaimo, but outsource it and get a budget for this and get an external company to basically prove your business case for this. Usually, it's a lot easier for companies to spend money to have a fixed budget on outsourcing than to hire people or get the current people to do something different. That's usually harder to do. So get an external agency to just prove your business case, and after you've proven your business case, then try to basically do it internally, get it internally, hire people for that, or get budget for that to get the right tools. That's usually the way to go.
Okay, so do it in-house, but after you've tested it and after you've seen...
Yeah, so I'm a very strong believer that optimization is something that you should be doing in-house. So of course you can outsource some tasks like developing or execution. That's something you can do externally, but the knowledge build-up should be done internally at your company. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank
you. Big round of applause.
Thank you.